everybody, and welcome back to the Menopause Summit. I am so happy that you are joining me for this session with the wonderful Dr. Romy Engel, a clinical health psychologist. And she is going to bring to us today a slightly different approach to managing, treating, navigate menopause symptoms, something that you may, a technique you may be familiar with, but not necessarily within the menopause conversation. So I'm going to let Dr. Romy introduce herself. But before then, I am Jacqueline. Welcome, everybody. I am the host and founder of the Menopause Summit, and I am a menopause educator and coach, a hormonal health specialist, and a very passionate women's health advocate, as anyone who has listened to any of the sessions on the summit know. I just want to be able to support you and inspire you with the speakers here at the summit to help us navigate through our menopause years. So Dr. Romy, welcome. I am so happy to have you here. Introduce yourself and we will start our conversation about how you support women on their menopause journey.
Okay, thank you so much for having me. And Jacqueline, you really are so prolific in the work you do in your posts. And every time I speak to you, I glean a little bit of information. So thank you so much. So I am a clinical health psychologist. I have been working in Israel for the past 17 years. And oftentimes, even within the field of psychology, people say, what's a health psychologist? And basically, the field of health psychology focuses on the interface between mind and body, which, as you can imagine,
is everything that we're doing here.
Which is everything, right? And which is part of why I have become so excited about this field as a woman who turned 50 this past August, and as a health psychologist. This is like touches on all the things that are so important to me. So my training is really to understand physiologically, biologically different medical or health situations, and sometimes there is a medical diagnosis. Sometimes there are, like in the field of functional medicine, there are a tremendous amount of symptoms and it's not clear what the diagnosis is. And oftentimes I work with people who have a lot of anxiety or depression that manifests in physical symptoms. So obviously, sort of my background, my passion about all things related to women has really prompted me to go deeper into this work. And maybe a little later, I'll tell you about the center I set up recently.
Yeah, so I definitely want to hear about the center because we've been involved in a little bit of that together, but I also want to let people know who are watching us about one of the other things that we're doing together, not intentionally together, but we are both on the Menopause Studies course. And that is a course being run by Tel Aviv University through their Advanced Academic Medical Studies program. And both Romy and I are in this program that is designed for medical practitioners and any other health specialists, women's health specialists, to really learn about menopause in a much deeper way. And as you and I both know, and I want to touch on it a little bit because you and I are both on this course, that regular medical doctor training programs all around the world do not include a part of menopause studies. It is not part, like they understand menopause from a biological, sort of very superficial perspective. But I don't know if you heard, there was this Mayo Clinic study a number of years ago that came out that said 93% of doctors did not feel adequately educated to treat menopausal women in their clinics. That means only 7% did feel confident. In England, I know there are also similar supplementary training programs that are now happening for doctors. But maybe before we talk about how you help women, we can talk about this fact that as you said, women have these symptoms: anxiety, depression, emotional changes, identity changes. Who am I? What's going on? This loss of identity, trying to place themselves, all these sort of, we know so much about the physical symptoms, but what you deal a lot more with is the emotional, mental things that women are going through. And the fact that when they go to their doctors, the doctors just can't identify what's going on, and they put them on either on antidepressants, which may or may not be relevant, but that's not really what the problem is. So because I know we're both doing this extra medical training, I just wanted you to maybe touch on that a little bit.
The psychological aspects, or maybe some of the sort of what would, alongside the physical symptoms, would I see, or would we see in the center? You know, there are so many physical symptoms, as we, you know, as we're learning, and the interface with psychology and the emotional world is that, from my perspective as a health psychologist, there is no physical experience that a person has that doesn't have an emotional overlay. So if we picture a middle-aged woman, perimenopausal woman, alongside of any of the symptoms she might be having, at this phase of her life, she is trying to make sense of what is happening to her body. She may be really struggling with continuing to embrace the body that functionally maybe gets tired more, or isn't able to do some of the things that really are part of who she is. You know, I think of a very personal experience for me is part of going up in Southern California. I was always very, very sporty, and was really into rollerblading. And one of the things, and this was sort of, they were like an extension of my foot. And one of the biggest challenges for me emotionally during the menopause transition was the fact that I knew that if I fell,
yes,
it would likely hurt more. It'd be more difficult to recover. And the stakes were higher for me. And this was, it might sound really like so absurd that this would be such a loss, but part of what I had to do in this transition was really sort of make peace with the fact that, you know, maybe my balance wasn't as good. And I think in some ways it really summarizes so much of how I think about sort of the physical, emotional. I had one very nasty fall about 4 years ago that was painful. I was only sort of injured on the surface, so it took a long time to heal. But I realized that this was no longer so suitable for me. And about the same time, I started, fortunately, doing SUP, stand-up paddle. And so being able to kind of be aware of the fact that part of what happens during this period is that there are so many changes. For some people, some of the things that we are no longer able to do can be very, very distressing.
Yeah.
Emotionally, I think the other thing that I see so much of is really because there is really a dearth and a gap between the knowledge out there and the professionals that can provide it to women who are going through it. There is so much uncertainty, misinformation, women having symptoms that they really can't make sense of.
Yeah.
And
when they go to their doctor has no idea either. And so they get put on antidepressants, or they get some form of medication without really understanding the nuances of what's going on, really understand the depth of what's going on. And if you would have gone to your doctor and said, you know, because what it sounds like one of the things that you went through was this very emotional loss of identity, of realizing you couldn't do the thing that had defined you for such a long time. How do you express that to a doctor? How do you say, like, I don't feel like myself? You know, I don't feel like myself. I feel like things are changing, but a doctor really isn't able to understand that, you may or may not be going to a therapist. You may or may not be able to express this to someone else. It's so subtle and nuanced, and it's so difficult for women to really find those words that make any sense and don't reinforce that narrative of a crazy woman who is just highly emotional.
Right. And it's so interesting if you think about a woman, say, who is wanting to get pregnant or is pregnant. There was a lot of dialogue about, I swim. Is it okay to continue to swim during my pregnancy? I rollerblade, and I remember these issues rollerblading during pregnancy. There was a period that I was told, second trimester, no. Yeah. But so it was on the table, it was discussed. I might get different opinions depending on who I consult with, but how do I proceed and what exercise will support and is appropriate was a discussion. Here, there are, because of the variability of the symptoms, because of the length of the perimenopause period, a woman can, aside from knowing that it's some part of this, she will no longer get her period, and that there is some knowledge about this thing called hot flashes. Aside from, there's so many other things that she does not know. And so emotionally, the women that I meet and work with are dealing with a tremendous amount of uncertainty and a tremendous amount of loss of control. Like, I don't know my body anymore. I don't know what food is right for it, how to feed it. I don't know exercise. I'm having a hard time dressing because my fat distribution has changed. And then there are really the emotional issues around sort of, how do I deal with the actual symptoms? This is sort of another interface on the psychological front. For example, maybe a woman might have disturbed sleep, and then how that it's sort of a ripple effect, and then her mood is compromised. So how they manage the symptoms, and again, sometimes whether it's a change in sexual functioning or sleep issue, and how that impacts their psyche, oftentimes presents itself. The other thing I find really interesting, the issue as the response to changes in the period or not having a period. For some women, this is
it's very interesting, because I think for some women, and I'm sure you've got examples of both ends of the spectrum, for some women it's like this freedom, finally this stage of my life is finished, and this freedom and this independence of like, my cycle has ended, I'm not tied to this thing anymore. And for some women, whether you have had children or not have children, whether you ever wanted to have children in the last 5 or 10 years, the loss of the ability to reproduce is a deep-seated loss of identity, a deep-seated loss of femininity. And I mean, I know women whose youngest, are 10 years old. It wasn't that they missed the opportunity to have another kid. They obviously didn't want another kid, but all of a sudden that ability, that potential has gone. And it's like that self-identification is totally turned on its head. So I'm sure you've sort of experienced both the ends of the spectrum.
Absolutely. I'm thinking of women who, it's interesting, as you were talking, I was thinking of the term FOMO, right? Like the fear of missing out. I don't know necessarily if I want another child, but the ambivalence of now or never, and what happens if in 3 years from now, I regret. So all of these changes, these physical changes, the significance of not being, able to get pregnant, to have a child, the sort of organic hormonal changes, really makes for a field day for a woman. And again, so much of the process is really helping her, first of all, be knowledgeable about it. The other thing to throw in the mix here is as far as sort of the reevaluation of roles she plays in her life.
Yes.
And that has a big emotional. So I'm thinking of a woman who came in who was thinking of many different women, but a woman who came in, her son was going to be conscripted into the army, and he was the youngest at home. And beyond the concern for his safety, but really what was going to happen at home, there were, empty nest. And this was, on the one hand, an opportunity to be able to pursue professionally, some of the things that she'd never really been able to do, but the uncertainty. And even though she could see that there was some possibility here, she ended up creating in her home a studio, an art studio. So she was able to, again, over the course of time that we worked together, sort of see that there was this loss, the need to prepare meals and care and spend time with her son that she cherished were no longer, they were going to change.
Yeah.
But what possibilities opened up. And I think as a cognitive behavioral therapist, one of the things that I'm really trying to do as I talk to women is kind of just hear as they talk, what are their beliefs? What are their preconceived notions around all these changes?
So I'm pleased you brought up cognitive behavioral therapy, because I know that is your modality that you work with. So tell us a little bit about what is known as CBT, a little bit about what is it and why this modality, or sort of, I know that a lot of women may have heard about this modality, but they see it in a more therapy setting, or in a more, going, sort of a setting of using CBT to help them with anxiety, depression, overcoming trauma. So tell us a little bit about it, and tell us why for you this is a modality that is so appropriate for menopausal women.
Okay. And we'll say that I use really a combination, and even in answering your question, Jacqueline, I'll talk about cognitive behavioral therapy and mindfulness, because I combine the two and they both offer different tools. One of the things about cognitive behavioral therapy really is understanding how our beliefs inform and fuel our thoughts about particular situations, and how what we do for a situation, how that also influences how we feel. And if you can picture that, this is not sort of a linear, I think, and then I do something, and then I have an emotional feeling. These things are happening all together. So and it's incredibly relevant for the approach to perimenopause and menopause, because before I even begin to have a symptom or a decrease in estrogen and progesterone, I have beliefs about what an aging woman is. And I have met women, I might have family members, grandmothers, mothers, aunts, who I have watched age. And so I have some language, I have some way of... And
also language that is influenced by media, by television and movies, by the images that we see in magazines. I know things are changing in the last few years, things are changing, but our society, our Western society, has very clear prescriptive images of what certain aged women should look like.
Exactly. That's another huge influence on how we approach these changes. So we go into it with, I think these forces and these factors that influence so much. I think oftentimes we don't even know, because advertising is so successful, we don't even know that we're infused with these, anti-aging, these messages. They're so subtle, but they influence how we believe and what we, our beliefs influence how we think. So I might have a core belief that aging is scary, aging equals death, as opposed to seeing that, I get older with time. The way I get older is aging. I can age
in all different ways.
In all different ways. I can really be very aware and mindful of how I do it. I can put a focus, and this is exactly where we start getting to the CBT. I can be aware that I have some thoughts that really don't serve me. Like every time somebody says hormonal or menopause, I get really anxious and constricted. And even just doing that. So I can become aware of the fact that I have a catastrophic thought. When I start going through menopause, it means.
Well, look, I can't tell you the number of women that I have spoken to who said to me, I read your stuff, I love your stuff, everything you're doing is great, but I'm only 48 or 49, and I just like, I can't even think about that word. Like I have a friend who said to me, like, I was running a workshop and she was like, I really wanted to come. I just couldn't be in that room talking about it. She's 48, 49. So I just couldn't be in that room talking about it. I just don't want to think about it. And so that is part also of that, not wanting to engage, not wanting to, like connect with that reality of where you are and what's going on because of the thoughts you have in your head. And then on the other side of the spectrum, I had a client who came to me, and I think this is a fascinating spin on the work you do also, is she said, I'm 53. I don't feel 53. I feel so much younger. I want to be doing, or she was also a young grandmother. So I want to be doing all the things that I want to be doing, but people hear my age and assume things about me that I don't want them to assume. And that was a fascinating spin on it, because she was coming up against that societal assumptions that she didn't connect with. So it wasn't even, she was fine where she was, but there were people around who saw her as a young, as a grandmother, even though she was a young grandmother, the age of 53, and expected her to behave in a certain way that she was not ready for yet. And she did not want that.
It's interesting because you give an example of somebody wanting to maybe, or having an opportunity to attend a workshop. But having almost like an automatic response, and the woman that you gave example, fortunately, was aware enough to be able to say, I'd like to, but I can't do it. One of the things that happens is when we have these very automatic thoughts and beliefs about this phase of our life, or what it means to no longer be able to get pregnant or not be fertile anymore, it very much influences how we behave. And one of the things that that I try to do with people is help them, first of all, become aware of the fact that they have all these thoughts and beliefs. And when something is anxiety provoking or threatening, we thankfully have a way to protect ourselves. We avoid it. Okay. But that's really good if it is really dangerous and threatening. If it's perceived threatening and dangerous, and I avoid reading, I don't buy books on menopause, I don't attend a workshop, it's problematic. And it's funny, Jacqueline, because one of the things that I even found myself doing, because I see women, I've had women in my clinic who are insulted, and when I ask them about hormones, what's your period? Have you entered hormone? They get angry.
Yes.
And one of the things I found myself doing is in my work, and when I, in the center, I will talk about middle age. I find myself trying to, I don't want to avoid it. I want to call a spade a spade. We are talking about perimenopause and menopause, but what I want to do is be aware that there are women that won't be able to take part in the therapy, the help, if this it triggers them.
Yeah.
And when they're triggered,
I was going to say, the word menopause becomes triggering for them.
Right, right. And so being able to help them understand, first of all, that they were triggered. What are the associations?
Yeah.
And sometimes I like to think of the example of a fish in water. A fish does not know that
they're living in water.
That's all they know. We only know life with our thoughts,
yeah,
and they're automatic
experiences.
Our experiences, right? And to be able to sort of just even kind of speculate that there might be another way of approaching it. One of the things that I see a lot is that fuels the avoidance of the topic of being proactive, of adopting an exercise and nutrition plan that would serve a woman, is being able to help a woman see that thinking that makes you nervous is catastrophic.
Yeah.
Okay, it's catastrophic. Is it possible that you can age, that you can go through perimenopause and menopause and hold on to parts of your life that you enjoy, give up things that no longer suit you, lose your fertility, grieve, but really come out in a good place? And again, the catastrophic thinking is it does two things. It fuels avoidance. It also, when a woman begins to experience a symptom, it could even be a disturbed sleep or a hot flash, or say a heartbeat, some sort of like,
heart palpitations.
Heart palpitations, thank you. I'm translating this in Hebrew.
Yes.
She will again have a catastrophic thought. Oh no, what's going on?
Yeah.
That's it. So the symptom can trigger the catastrophic thought. And again, these cycles can just sort of run. And part of the work of CBT is to, first of all, just understand that we constantly have these thoughts. Some of them are pretty unbalanced. They might lend themselves to I have to stay young, or I must avoid this topic. To be able to have thinking that is more balanced and more healthy and more proactive.
Is there an intention, or have you seen the results where it's not just about changing the belief, but maybe they even get to a stage of embracing this stage of life, or is that too much to expect?
That's kind of the end point. I think, I kind of like to think of it sort of sequentially.
Yeah.
In order for me to get to even the possibility of embracing, first of all, I have to understand all these huge physical and emotional difficulties and differences and changes.
Yeah.
Once I understand it, then I want to understand how I perceive it, that I have these lens, that when I meet these differences, and I don't know exactly which one of these, how long they're going to take, if this is the only symptom, or if I will then experience achy joints. But once I understand that I have a choice on how I approach it, then I've already made progress. I can be bothered by my mood change, but I also might be aware that there is this kind of ability to sort of legitimacy to take more care of myself. So I think so many things have to happen for a woman to get to that point where she can embrace it. From my experience, it's a thrill. I mean, it's one of the things that is the most thrilling to me, is to see a woman sort of get to that point where she says, you know what, I do notice that I don't care so much if I'm late to an event. If I used to be late to me, I used to think what if I get fired? What if my friends, that she's able to say, wow, I got caught up with the kids, or and I'm able to do something that's important right now. So again, some of this is hormonally driven. My focus on what are people going to think or what people expect from me kind of shifts. And right now there's this inner voice that's very tuned into, is this working for me? Is this friendship?
Yeah. And I think also the space and the recognition that for some women, their menopause symptoms, they're physical. We know that there are others, the emotional, the cognitive, the psychological, all the things that we're really delving into here. But for some women, the physical symptoms can actually be debilitating. They can really, they're very real. It's not that it's all in your head and it's just a thought. I'm not just thinking I'm having a hot flash. I really am having a hot flash. Or I'm not just thinking that I can't sleep. I really can't sleep. So there are real physical symptoms that women go through that can be really debilitating. But I think even within that context, to create through the CBT work that you do, the acceptance, the no judgment, the no shame, the being able to navigate it, ride it out until you are able to feel a little bit more in control, to have the tools that CBT gives you to be able to navigate the real, very present things that you're going through.
And it's so important that you point that out, because sometimes people think when you introduce a psychologist, that means I'm making it up. It's all in my head.
Yeah.
It is in your head in the sense that there's the hormones that are changing, but this is very, very real. And with CBT, what we're trying to do is help a woman understand that this very, very real hot flash is exacerbated by stress.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think in a negativistic, catastrophic way, my body will respond. That sympathetic nervous system, my heart rate, my heartbeat, the cortisol, all those parts of my body that respond to danger and threat are triggered. So I have a hot flash. I'm now saying to myself, what happens if the staff sees that I'm having a hot flash? What happens if I'm perspiring? Did I bring an extra shirt to change into? And that alarm response fuels the physiology, which fuels the thoughts. And sometimes what happens is I will then, and I'm thinking of a woman that approached the center who became avoidant of going to staff meetings, a woman as an architect who became sort of socially phobic around this, what is going to happen. So being able to notice that any hot flash, no matter how debilitating it is, has a start, a middle, and an end. Being able to say to myself, here it goes. Okay, I'm going to kind of turn inwards, and I know that when I breathe, my body stays calm. It helps me ground, kind of like a wave. A huge, huge wave is always going to have a point where it crashes. And to be able even to use an image, to be able to say in the middle of the night, if it's disturbed sleep, it's unfortunate that I've woken up and now I have to change my clothes or have a cold shower, but I'll figure out how to get through my day tomorrow. Because what often happens is a catastrophic thought will then trigger another problem, like the sort of the ripple effect, which is now you can't go back to sleep. And these things sort of
and especially the catastrophization of the situation is so easy to do when you are in hormonal fluctuation, when you are in perimenopause, when you've got brain fog, when it's you've got the emotional mood swings. It's so easy to catastrophize a situation or a thing that you're going through because because it's all so enmeshed with each other, it's so many layers on top of each other that it's really difficult to peel back and to, you know, stop a second, breathe a second, deal with the here and now, and use all the techniques that you are teaching. I wanted to ask you a question. Is there a specific candidate that is really right for CBT? Can any and every woman participate in? Are there, you know, do you have to be in a really bad, debilitated symptom experience, or sort of what are the sort of the types of profiles of women that are appropriate?
I think the important thing to understand about CBT is that there is, on the one hand, it's incredibly, there's so much science and research to show the benefit of CBT in very respectable journals, that CBT is helpful for hot flashes, for sleep disturbances, and a variety of other symptoms. So that's really the good news. The flip side of that is its work. And I think at a time where women are looking for a quick fix, I'm going to take the vitamin, I'm going to do this class, and it's going to keep me young. So I think the first thing I would say is a woman that is really invested in trying to develop some practical, effective skills to get through this period, who's willing to work. And again, I think for most of us, we're willing to work when we know that there's going to be a benefit. This is going to be helpful, whatever it is. And so I think there is the promise, there's the science, there's the empirically supported data to show that this works. So a woman would have to be motivated. There's really what I often say to women is that, unfortunately, you know, if we think about this bridge, the menopause, that the transition like a bridge, unfortunately, we don't know what our journey is going to be. We don't know how long, we don't know which of the symptoms, but we have a tremendous amount of ability to figure out sort of how we undertake this journey. And with CBT, being able, and one of the things I even do in the clinic is I will just say to people, I just want you to even notice what happens to your body if you picture menopause or even aging as you would like it to be. How does that feel in your body? So think about being able to take on a hobby or think that alongside of these difficulties, there will be new, like you said, embracing, there'll be new opportunities. Just kind of notice what happens to your body now. And usually I do it in the reverse order. Now just I want you to notice when you think about the what ifs or it shouldn't, just notice what happens and helping them really understand that this CBT, that's kind of like this, you know, this acronym, is incredibly practical, that anything that you do to think in a more balanced manner is, it's not only going to sort of be helpful, your body is going to respond to this thinking.
I wanted to ask you the relationship, if there is a relationship between CBT and mindfulness, because I think some people think they're very similar, or, you know, are they used together? Are they sort of co-techniques that are used together? We haven't talked about mindfulness very much in this Menopause Summit. As a technique, we haven't sort of focused on it specifically, but because we're talking about sort of this CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, I know that there is a bit of an overlap between the two. So I just wanted to get your take, as if you use them together, are they two very different things? Sort of what's the relationship between them?
Okay, interesting, because mindfulness in the past, I mean, it's been around for many, many years. Certainly in the past 10 years, 15 years, there has been so much research to show the benefit of mindfulness in so many different emotional, anxiety, depression, and simply just to sort of, you know, mindfulness is a whole world, but it certainly has a lot of applications for menopause. I use them together. in a very simple way of thinking, if I had to sort of summarize it, mindfulness is a way of being with this moment, this breath, as it unfolds, without judgment, with a real sort of compassionate approach, and acceptance. So I am being with, if we sort of apply it to, say, a hot flash, or even an aching joint, or a heart palpitation. Again, assuming that with the heart palpitation, I have gone to my doctor, have ruled out any cardiac issues.
Yes.
But if I know that, I spoke to a woman last week who said her heart palpitations always precede her hot flash. This is how she knows it's coming. Okay. So if she's able to notice that there's a precursor to the heart palpitation, and kind of be able to sort of sit with it, follow it, watch it, kind of like, if I look out my curtain here, I happen to be overlooking, I can see the sea, but I'm looking at, sorry about that. I'm looking at the sea the same way. The mindfulness is adopting, kind of like I'm looking, the sea is blue today, there are waves, it's flat. I'm just observing. And with mindfulness, I'm developing this observing self.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that I'm enjoying it, but I'm kind of just letting it be. And that reactive, critical, how long is this going to last? I hate it. I'm trying to sort of let it settle. And in conjunction with CBT, I think one of the benefits of incorporating mindfulness into CBT is what I want a woman to do. I want to help a woman really be curious. I want her to be kind of invest in, like, sort of an investigative kind of, wow.
Yeah.
So did you notice when you felt more tired, that irritability or that sort of plummeting of your mood? I want her to, again, I'm not encouraging her to like it, to be happy when it comes, but I want her to sort of, she may not be able to have control initially, but she might have a lot of say about what she does with it. So mindfulness, that observing self, really can support a woman to sort of make sense of some of the symptoms or life changes.
Yeah.
And then the cognitive behavioral part, being able to take that awareness and really think about, are there other perspectives I can apply? And the beauty of, again, having just said that I don't know if a woman's going to go through perimenopause for 4 years or 5 years, if it's going to be a little rocky, but not too extreme. When I work with women, I can let her know that these are not strategies that she has to practice for months and years to get benefit. I just bring one little concrete example. I have these straws. I always have it in my clinic. And again, just having a woman take a straw and just having her, this could be a task, a cognitive behavioral task. I want you to just notice next time you wake up in the night, you're going to put this by your bed, next time and your sleep is disturbed, I want you to just notice first what's going through your mind, and then let that sit. And just for 1 minute, whatever feels, I don't want her to look at her clock or watch, but just see if you can take 10 very, very slow, deep breaths through the straw. So I'm saying to her, we don't know how long it's going to last. We don't know how long that sleep disturbance is going to, but let's just set it aside. I'm not pushing it away. And let's just kind of come back to your breath and then see what happens. And again, anything that she can do to kind of befriend the symptom, the discomfort, notice the thought. And again, with mindfulness and CBT, they really sort of work very much hand in hand. So if I think, wow, what I'm going to do right now during this distress is, and it might be irritability. I'm going to notice it. I'm going to see what happens to my body. I'm going to mind my thoughts. And then my strategy is to just take 1 minute or 3 minutes to breathe. She will likely find that things really get a lot quieter in here physiologically.
Yeah.
She's.
Well, we know, again, we haven't focused on it deeply during the summit, but we know the power of the breath, the deep breath work, calming yourself down, changing the sympathetic nervous system to the parasympathetic nervous system. The power of breath and just stopping is something I use when I work with my women in their yoga classes. So thank you for sharing that really, really practical, very practical and easy to implement strategy. We're all about practical strategies here. We need to empower ourselves. We need to empower the women listening to know that this is not something that is just happening to their bodies, but they can actually take control and do things to help them navigate. And those, easy, simple strategies, they may seem so ridiculous, but they actually really do work. They really do help.
And I just wanted to add, because I say to people sometimes, they're talking about a very debilitating symptom, and I'm with my straw. And I think, as you said, when a woman understands what happens to herself, what happens to her physiologically when she's experiencing discomfort, and how the straw helps her activate the parasympathetic nervous system, it makes sense. But sometimes it really, when I'm talking to women, it feels like absurd to be talking about something so simple as your breathing as an anchor to just kind of help you get through it.
And also when they experience it and they feel it, because you actually really do feel significantly the difference in your body. It's not just, some like esoteric thing that is sort of, so difficult to identify. You really do feel the change and the difference. So just like, with changing the thought changes the way you feel when you are, navigating your client through it and directing your client through it, and they actually really feel the difference. It helps to reinforce that this is not just some weird thing, but actually, I can actually notice how I'm feeling, and that I can notice and measure those changes of my feelings.
Yes. And I'm thinking about a woman who, sometimes I'll say, I want you to have this one in your car, in your purse, by your bed. And we were, this particular woman, we were working on using relaxation and deep breathing for sleep disturbance. And she came in the following week. She said, you won't believe it. In the car, when my husband's driving, I got really, really nervous, and I pulled out, I closed my eyes, I pulled, he was driving, I did my deep breathing, and it was so profound. And again, she was kind of baffled. They've been married for over 40 years.
Wow.
She couldn't believe how driving with him, again, just was so different. So she came in for more sort of hormonal kinds of issues, but women start seeing that this impacts other areas.
So before we finish, because we've spoken a long time about all these things, and it's really amazing, and I'm so excited that we can give women really practical things to do. So, but before we finish, I want you just to talk about the center that I know you've set up, and just touch on it for a minute, so that women, either if you are located in Israel, your center is in Israel, or otherwise, all your contact details are below, so women can reach out to you. But just talk about the center, the Womena Center that you set up.
Okay, so Womena was opened our doors the end of December, and only recently have I realized how many years I have been how long I was pregnant with Womena, far longer than I was even aware. Womena is a center. It's an online. It's hybrid, so it has an online aspect and a frontal. People come in, women come in for treatment, and as we're talking about menopause, it's a real puzzle. You know, what comes first? Is it sleep disturbance? Is it the depression? Is it the hot flash? I mean, it really is a puzzle. And the book Menopause Manifesto, which she talks about, Jen Guntner talks about, this is her phrase, menopuzzle. It's complicated. We agreed that we really need professionals who are incredibly knowledgeable so that they can help a woman navigate. We also need, different treatments. Some women really, really need, they might be having all the symptoms, but what they need is more of the psychological. What is it like now that the kids are out of the home? Or what does it mean for me not to be able to get pregnant anymore? Or how do I navigate my body? I don't recognize my body. So with that understanding, Womena was set up. Again, it's for women at different transitions of their life, late adolescence to, old age, recognizing that women need perhaps nutritional changes. So we have naturopaths. They might be having psychological issues. So we have therapists, CBT. We have a Chinese doctor who specializes in hormonal treatment. There is, I'm trying to think how to say this in English, gynecosof. There is a specialty area, in Hebrew, gynecosophia, that specializes in hormones and life cycles of a woman. So it's like gynecology, but it's not. It's like
gynecology, endocrinology mixed together.
Right, but it's not medicine. It's not an MD, but it's with a very deep understanding. We have yoga. Is, from my perspective, if every woman had yoga in their life during this period, I know it served me tremendously. So the center offers treatment for women. Again, perimenopause, menopause, but it might be other life transitions. A woman goes through an assessment. Everybody goes through an assessment with me. It's a Zoom assessment. They complete questionnaires afterwards, and then I determine.
I think what is really special about the center, which is why I wanted just to bring it up as we're closing, is because of its integrative approach, because it really takes the woman as a whole being and really figures out, okay, what is it that you need and what modalities do we have here available at the center that can support you and help you, and really looking at all these different modalities. And I think one of the things that is really important to stress is that there is the Western conventional medicine route, but there are lots and lots of other different modalities, and each woman will connect with a different modality, and sometimes you may need a combination of a couple of things. And there are lots of different things out there, including CBT, including yoga, including Chinese medicine, including reflexology, including a whole range of different things, and they are all valid and relevant with evidence to back up their treatments and the modality and the success and the validity of them. And different women will resonate with different things, just like you may not like the first doctor you go to, you may not like the first therapist you see, you may not like the first dress you see in a shop if you're going to go shopping. There are lots of different ranges of alternatives, and find the right thing that works for you. And that's why I really love this center that you've set up, because it does bring all these different people together, all these different experts together to figure out how are we going to treat the woman as a unique being at different stages of her life cycle, with what she needs and with what she feels that she connects and engages with.
I want to add, because I think that holistic really, we started with health, psychology, mind, body. During this period of a woman's life, it really has to be holistic. And one of the things that we do is there is a computer program and staff meetings. So we as a team are thinking about her together, whether the woman meets one therapist or beyond, but the thinking is holistic.
Amazing.
And the other thing is too, is that one of the things that really prompted me to set up the centers, I was seeing women just going from place to place and being ferried around and really getting lost along the way. And one of the things that we really are striving for is to have it centralized. It's not instead of a GP, it's not instead of, but it's so that we can really help her navigate and communicate with any specialists, whether it's within the team. And I can tell you, even though we are, 4 months, maybe approaching 5 months, we're in our infancy already, seeing the benefits, the efficacy, and the speed. When a woman comes to a place where she's understood and she knows that there's a team thinking about her, things happen really, really quickly.
Well, I really want to thank you for your fabulous work and for the way that you are supporting women. And I think that that message that you just ended with is a great way to end our conversation, that really to navigate these years, to navigate anything in a woman's life, but to navigate these years specifically, you need to have that holistic, integrated approach. You can't think, as you said earlier on, just by taking that magnesium pill or taking that vitamin or taking this or taking that or doing that one thing, that you're going to, solve all the challenges that you're facing. It's a very integrative approach, but there are things available and there are things that work and there are things you can do. So I want to thank you so much for joining me today, Romy. Thank you so much for all the work you're doing. Thank you, Jacqueline, and keep doing your posts, because I so enjoy it. Really, it's inspiring, and I think that one of the things, your energy and your excitement, this is the joy of this work. Is that it feels so important. For some of us, it's really because of our own difficulty along the way getting to the right treatments, that you really want, if there's one woman who has an easier journey, an easier transition, it makes it worthwhile. So well, thank you so much. Romy's contact details are all listed below, that you can reach out to her, you can visit her center. And I thank you all for joining us today, and looking forward to seeing you at the next session in the Menopause Summit. Have a great day, everyone.